I would like you to introduce our next two keynote speakers who are going to be talking about emergency remote learning, transforming challenges into opportunities, which is definitely a topic to talk about. We're going to have two speakers who are going to be sharing the slot and co-presenting. One is the first speaker is Dr. Fernando A. Senior or Senior. Dr. Fernando design bridges that promote the acquisition of expertise to improve the performance of individuals and organizations. He has vast international experience in the Americas, creating customized solutions, including face to face training, self instruction, blended learning, and e learning for business, education, government, and not for profit organizations. And co presenting with him will be Dr. Kashif Asdi. Dr. Asdi is an academic entrepreneur with a passion for helping colleges and universities to improve access to high quality education. He has over 20 years experience with online education. His academic experiences span various roles: chief academic officer, vice president, faculty, senior director in fully online, hybrid, and traditional instructional modalities across public, private, and proprietary educational institutions. Dr. Asti works with president, provosts, deans, and program leaders and faculty to support colleges and departments' strategic priorities around online educational innovation. And ladies and gentlemen, at this point, and our people who have joined us, Mr. Asdi is joining us from US, I think. Which state, sir?
Yes, good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
And you are joining us from which state in US?
I'm in Dallas area, Texas.
Oh, okay, Texas. And we have Dr. Fernando from Chile. Am I right?
Yes, I'm in Chile, residing in
Okay.
Chile, not originally
Okay.
from Chile.
Yes, residing in Chile. He's joining us from Chile. So I am going to, at this point, leave the mics and the screen in your competent hands, and we will probably come up with questions. You guys, gentlemen, have approximately almost like till 4:20 our time, 4:25. So that's almost like 40 minutes or something for you. So I will leave it in your hands and bow out and let you continue with your presentation. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. And I should say, Assalamu alaikum. It is a pleasure to be here with you and being with my friend. I will provide a few slides first to provide a context and then say more about Kashif, my friend. Well, first, I should say that this is where I'm at in South America, Chile, right now. And it is precisely, and this is where you are, which is the opposite side of the world, or you may say I'm at the opposite side of the world. But it's fascinating that in this day and age, we're able to provide a bridge to connect us despite the geographical differences and time zones. And it's through this event and through the technology that we're able to come together. And I've taken the liberty of extending that bridge to my dear friend and brother, Pakistani brother, Dr. Kashif Asdi. And it is precisely because, and this is a theme that I will bring throughout this conversation, the issue of bridges and connecting us. So it's my pleasure really to be, given that I'm not being able to physically be present, I couldn't be present in your country without sort of the company of my friend Kashif. I represent Quality Matters, which is an organization in the US that specifically focused in quality and ensuring, as our motto says, helping you as an institution deliver your online promise, because you make a promise to your learners when they come to study with you in a virtual environment, and Quality Matters provide that guidance and that structure. And we'll say a few things, but keep in mind that our senior director will be joining us in a presentation next Monday. So please stay tuned for that. to listen to Dr. Gao. But the biggest scope, because I will make references to some things, is that Quality Matters in its package to help institutions provide an infrastructure for quality has these components of their entire quality assurance package. One is a set of rubrics and standards that define specific criteria for what it means to have a quality course. Second, a process of peer reviewers that will apply the standards in a fashion similar to university and program accreditation, but focus on specific courses with the intention of making those courses more effective. Coupled with that is the large offer of professional development courses and seminars for designers, for faculty, for administrators, for everyone who's part of the community that sustain the quality online program. Quality Matters started with research and sustained research practice. And finally, it is sustained by a large community, which was precisely what gave the reason to exist for Quality Matters. And those are important attributes. I will, at this point, I'll ask you if you can, I'm going to ask you just one question. If those of you who have access to a phone or through your own computer, go to this page, menti.com, and enter the code 561550. And just answer for me in one word the question of how do you feel about remote learning at this moment? I'll give you just a few seconds if you can access, and we'll see whoever gets to access this information. In the meantime, Kashif, if you want to please say something about yourself and your interests here.
Absolutely. Thanks, Fernando. And I posted the URL as well as the code in the chat for those of you who would like to do this. Just briefly about myself while you're filling that out. My name is Kashif Asdi. I was born and raised in Lahore, Pakistan, and gone through my undergrad education from National College of Arts, Lahore, and moved to the United States back in 1992, a long time ago. I went to University of Minnesota for my doctorate in education. I started with design communication, then did my PhD in curriculum and instruction in learning technologies. And I've been in online education world for about 24 years now. Started with the University of Minnesota, and then joined Capella University. That's where I met my brother here, Dr. Senior, which was such a delight to work with at Capella. That's where I started my journey as an instructional designer, and moved into the management role and the director role at Capella. Worked there for 10 years and moved to a startup company called Sophia Learning. That's where I had a proprietary patent online learning model. It's called Sophia Learning. It's a self-paced undergrad courses for gen ed programs. And I stayed with them for about 5 years, and then moved to Dallas to be with my family. And that's where I started working with a company called Academic Partnerships. And currently I help and consult with, there are about more than 60 universities nationwide here in the US. And the programs, they vary from business to nursing to education, public administration. There are a wide range of programs. Worked on probably around more than 300 plus programs already to help and develop online program. So I'm so excited when Fernando actually asked me to join him at this conference, which it's a twofold. One is that I want to give back what my experience have been and share with the community in Pakistan. And other is had to work with Fernando. I have to find some reasons to be with Fernando. So I'm so happy and glad I'm here. Thanks, Fernando, for the opportunity.
You're welcome. And let me say, I have a technical problem, difficulty changing browsers, so I'll hopefully come back to your responses. And I'm sorry, I'm gonna miss having to share that. So I'm gonna skip and hopefully try to come back and find the responses to your questions. But whatever you said, probably because I've repeated this exercise through many different countries in this side of the Americas and Latin America. And typically is the sense of between excitement and fear and sort of concern for this immediate and abrupt change to remote learning. And of course, there are some institutions and some individuals and some faculty members and even students who have already been involved and been participating. So this is makes no difference for them. It's just an extension of what they've been living. But for many institutions as a whole, and many both faculty and students, this is a very abrupt change to all of a sudden not be able to meet physically. So that said, just one message, just be nice. Everybody is really just in the same place and as scared as you are. So we're just gonna need to take it one step at a time. Now, in this presentation, I'm gonna walk you through two doors, basically. As you go through doors, and these are important questions, so the why and the how. And I want you to hold on to the questions, the responses of the why. And what is the why? And that's the question of why we teach. That hasn't changed. Our students are our students still. We are their teachers. They rely on us to help us to guide them through their own professional development because they want to be active participants in their countries and the disciplines. It's their future, and we're helping them to commit and make that transition to a professional life. That has not changed and will not change. And you need to hold on to that truth in spite of everything else that you might be confronted in the other question, the other door, which is the how. And that's the only aspect that might be new. Some things will be the same, other things will be different. And those things that are different may offer us some possibilities, some opportunities, which at this moment, perhaps we can see them. We don't get to see that beyond that. So the question is, how do we teach? That's the aspect that in this new era, in this new situation, that's the aspect that forces us to think more closely and understand what things we do in the classroom and what kind of activities and how that happens. Going beyond the mechanics of getting together with them in the classroom and the presentations, how learning occurs in the physical space, so that we can then consider establishing a bridge between learning. Our object, remember, is we're still focused on our learners and how do we help them achieve, sort of acquire new skills, new competencies, new mindsets, new practices. That's still our goal, and our commitment will not change, regardless of the COVID, regardless of the technology, regardless of anything. The question is, how do we migrate? How do we extend? How do we extract what's the essence of our teaching process so that it can be mediated through technology? And I'm going to leave you this, and I'll share the links to some of these references so you can look them for yourselves. But just a quick reference to a very new friend and colleague, virtual colleague, Dr. Seen Morris, who basically in the same line reminds us that in this particular moment, we need to be focused on our learners and taking care of our community and our communication, taking care of each other. Everything else, we'll figure it out. Everything else we'll learn together how to use the technology. But we need to focus on the individuals. So I invite you to follow this link, which we'll post on the chat as well. Few distinctions between making this transition from the face-to-face to the online. First, the most immediate is obviously the pedagogy, how we go about teaching, what are the dynamics of teaching. And one attribute of that is that in the physical classroom, we meet synchronously, meaning at the same time. We're now separated through time or different time zones, and also by geography, but we're at the same time connected. You're listening to me, I'll be reading your chats, and we're having an interaction at the same time. While in online learning, that becomes asynchronous. We don't necessarily need to be connected at the same time. And this may sound like for those faculty members who might be stepping into this sort of whole world and different world, even the terminology may seem daunting, like asynchronous, but basically is speaking or having a connection with someone else that's not present at the same time. When we read a book, we're learning asynchronously with the author who wrote the book many years ago, maybe 100 years ago. Whether it's a religious book or whether it's a music book, we're having a conversation through a book with someone who's not present. That's asynchronous. Then is the aspect of logistics, of geography, is we have to be in the face-to-face classroom together in the same place. And that is convenient to gather students in one classroom. Nonetheless, that has also its challenges. For some students and some faculty, they make great efforts just to get to that physical space, to that classroom. Some they have to go across the city or move from a different city in order to attend that institution and be present in that classroom, or walk or take a bike or whatever means of transportation. It implies the logistics. While in the classroom, you're connected. The classroom is available 24/7, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Second, the third, the students also are able to because they need to be in the physical classroom, they need to be nearby the campus. So any student outside of the city where the institution is being held, it's out of reach for institutions in other parts of the country because they physically cannot get there. They need to be physically close to the campus, which is not the case in the virtual environment. And finally, and most importantly, is for the aspect of the teaching, is that the teacher normally, because is an expert in its discipline, is able to gather the students and share that most of the time through a conversation, maybe supported by some slides or some models, whatever the discipline might be, but to be there to share, be present with the students. And the online environment, you're able to do that, but it gives us other opportunities to bring other resources, opportunities for also to think of our learners, focus on our learners, not on what we have to say, but on what our learners need to do, and how would we help them, and how do we guide their process by establishing milestones and different activities, so they not just listen to us, but they're owning the knowledge we're trying to share with them. I'll make reference to some resources. Quality Matters, I mentioned, is an institution that's focused on quality. They have produced specific standards. The most recent version of the standards for higher education includes 42 specific design standards of what it means to be design an effective course, based on research, based on best practices. And the document that you see on the right, it's a complement to the rubrics, I'm sorry, to the standards, because it provides for every single standard a definition, examples, non-examples, and even suggestions for peer reviewers when they review your course. So then again, you should join the conversation with Dr. Gao in next Monday, Yaping Gao. And out of that total list of 42 standards, because of the situation that many institutions across the world are facing with being forced to go remote, Quality Matters has pulled out the essential standards that are helpful for this situation. There's a link, again, which I will share in the chat. Oh, thank you, Kashif, share there the link. You can access this document by yourself. I will only make a distinction that in the document, QM makes a distinction between different stages of how to respond to this crisis. One is phase one, which is making sure you have cover the bases so that you can provide the instruction that you will need and the connection, that connectivity that you need have with your learners, such as providing specific explicit instructions, such as because the dynamics and the policies and the calendar might have changed, you have to communicate that to the learners, and how you're going to sustain that conversation, through what kinds of media, through what kinds of technology, what resources will be available, like support them with technology issues. So that just phase one, immediate response, this is what you do. Then phase two, once you have covered that, then they specify other aspects, such as creating that sense of community, communication, making sure that your learners are all connected and connected with you, and that you can provide more details about the learning experience, the materials, the assignments, what have you, and the feedback. And then phase three, once you've covered all that, then you can start looking at other aspects that will make the course and the learning experience more effective, such as multimedia and making a learning more of an active process, and protecting student data and the like. So I invite you to come and consider this document. Then I will ask my friend Kashif to elaborate then in this distinction, and also make a distinction between this emergency response, what we're trying to do now to respond right now at this moment, which we can't get access to our physical classrooms, versus what is an online education that's typically designed and developed and takes more time to craft and to develop. Kashif, please.
Thank you, Fernando. So yeah, that's an important distinction that we all got to make. We were put in this emergency situation without a choice, and the response by the educators, faculty, administrators, I'm impressed. Around the globe, I'm impressed how educators, they use this time to provide the continuity of education for children and adults during this time in the best possible way they could. And some used online LMS, learning management systems. Some used emails. Some used telephones. Some use TV channels. So it's a wide variety, or Zoom, just like we are doing now. So that is an emergency remote education. I want to be very clear, not to think that what we did just now is an online education. Online education, there's more systematic process that's involved. As we can see from this emergency response, it helped with continuity of education, connection with your students as much as possible. But the data is showing, and research is showing, that the students did not have a very good experience, which doesn't surprise us because the students were not used to online education. And there were some faculty challenges too. Faculty were swamped. They were actually feeling overwhelmed what to do. So those, and accessibility issues as well. There were some students who could not access the content. Even if there was a website or the course was in LMS, they didn't have access to it. So all those experiences are fine for this response as we speak, because there was still some continuity of education. But what we want to think about is that this pandemic, unfortunately, is not going to go away very quickly. I hope it does. I hope. However, we cannot have our guards down. We want to plan for fall and beyond. And that's where this online education, the bridge from emergency remote education onto online education for a long-term solution, we ought to think as educators, as faculty, we ought to think about it in a systematic way. It starts with analysis. We want to think about our students, our faculty, what kind of technology is available, what kind of internet access students have. Do they all have computers? Maybe not. Then you think about using some mobile, designing for mobile technology, because I believe almost everybody now in every household, they have a cell phone. So those kind of decisions you start thinking about as you do some analysis. And then you move on to your instructional design or online instructional model. Do you want to offer this, as I said, you want to offer it with the LMS? And is it about providing access to resources where they can engage, interact, and then provide that model where that students they can learn, they can engage, and that's what the online education is about. Then you move on to developing. So you think about and design based on your analysis. You start thinking about what kind of materials you need for online education. Do strongly recommend to create some course templates, because students, if they're in your program, they're going to take several courses in your program. So it's a good idea to use quality matter rubric, for example, and standard Fernando shared. And based off that and other instructional design best practices, develop these templates so that there is a consistent experience from students' aspect. Then you implement that model with your students and your faculty. And remember, in faculty, if you're an administrator or you're a faculty yourself, remember you have to have your faculty development, how to teach online, what is the best practice to create online community. So there's lots of thinking and planning going on. As you implement, then you start evaluating as well, and how it's going from students' perspective, from faculty's perspective, etc. Some milestone, and Fernando earlier mentioned about, there are certain milestones, and that's where this is a great opportunity to think about how you actually can start reset your why you're teaching. And remember, this world right now, it's not about what you know, it's about what you do with the knowledge. So that's a mindset we have to think about, that what students will be able to do. So the milestones to develop an online course it starts with the learning outcomes. And I like to use the backward design process, where you start with the purpose, with learning outcomes, and then think about how students are going to demonstrate those learning outcomes, and then provide some learning activities and design learning activities around that. So that way, it's actually a very efficient and effective online education, where students actually are getting what they're supposed to be getting, and without extra material. You can always put those. Again, gather course materials that you currently use. Am I running out of time?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
And let me, because these are lists that we can share, but let me
Absolutely.
address, I know we're going to get to some questions, but let me address one question that was asked by one of our participants. Aisha asked, don't you think that sticking to standards to the letter takes away students' creativity? I don't, and as a designer, I don't. When we mean standards, we don't mean blueprints that are boxed in of how you need to design a course. Standards are guideposts. And let me give you one example. If we want to ensure that a student acquires a skill, regardless of the discipline, math, science, medicine, psychology, painting, dancing, we need to be explicit about what is it that we want our learners to learn and demonstrate. That is a standard, defining objectives from the point of view of the learner, so that it's not about me, the instructor, or what information I want to present, but what the learner is supposed to accomplish. So if you follow the standards, then what you declare as an objective for the learner, then it has to be consistent with how you evaluate or how do you assess the learner. And there's a whole range of creativity. And very quickly, I'll just mention one example. I just finished running a remote learning experience for 1 week for almost 2,000 teachers in Latin America. And that was based on standards. What was my product? They needed to develop their own strategy for their own course to make a transition to a remote learning. It was not my course. I didn't tell them how to do it. I just told them, you need to define a strategy for your own course. And I gave them the deliverable, I gave them structure, I gave them rubrics so they self-assess, and they generated over 1,000 unique products. So there's no issue of creativity, but you have to provide some guidance. Otherwise, it can go, you will miss committing to your promise, the promise that you make to your learners.
And if I may add, the standards are meant for usability. Mostly it's the consistency that you think that is from usability of a student. Because I'm a user, I don't need to learn where the location of my assignment is or what is it called every week or week. So I want to be consistent so that I focus on learning the content versus trying to find my information around. And instruction is clear for that.
Okay, and I'll end just with this slide. Really, thank you. I wish I could be there with you. I've enjoyed so much. You can imagine how many hours of YouTube videos I've watched. It's an amazing country. Going back to the analogy of bridges, you know how to make bridges. It's just apply the same skills to this situation in which you find yourselves.
I really would like to ask any questions that we have, or they have already been gone. So we're going to move forward. I know that actually, Fernando and Kashif, I think it was a very, very well done presentation. Thank you very much.